We have another endgame position here with white to move, and this is a completely winning endgame for white. But here we will discuss how your thought process should be before you make the move. So you see white is a pawn up, and these 2 pawns are only two squares from queening, but black has also one pawn which is only two squares away from queening. So before you make a move, you have to understand few things. First of all, it's very likely that maybe you will lose both of these pawns, because this pawn is very close to the king. This pawn is very close to this bishop. So most likely these 2 pawns will be lost. Most likely. You may not lose it, but most likely they will be lost. So your critical pawn is this pawn. This is your critical pawn. Now you have to understand another thing, that this pawn is going to queen. Maybe this pawn will queen and maybe this pawn will queen, and there will be an exchange of queens. Maybe. Okay, and now um, you you have to somehow deflect this bishop so that you can queen this pawn. Okay, and you also have to understand that black is most likely going to get a queen here. Most likely black will get a queen here and you will get a queen there, right? And somehow the queens will get exchanged. And what is the ideal square for you to exchange the queens is this square, this b7 square, so that you can capture with the pawn and queen next move. Okay, so before you even make any move or even calculate variations, these are the things that should come to your head. The ideal square for me for white to exchange queens is b7, and most likely black will get a queen, and maybe I will get a queen, or maybe there will be some exchanges. Now let's see. Now let's start calculating variations. What should be white's move? Now it's very obvious that white cannot protect this pawn. If white tries to protect this pawn, let's say bishop d2, then simply this h2, h7, and then black will give a check. King c3, bishop takes h7, d7, queen, queen, queen c6. This is a draw. White cannot win this. So any move with the bishop or king is not going to work. Same thing with king. Even if you move the king, then he'll simply move, and this is a draw. He will queen, you will queen, and it will be a draw. Okay, so it is very obvious that there cannot be a move with the king or bishop. Now let's see what happens with d7. You cannot play d7 because your king is on a light square, and if you deflect the bishop this way, then what happens? d7, bishop takes d7, h7, and then bishop f5 check picks up the pawn, and black will win, right? So you cannot deflect the bishop through d7. You have to deflect the bishop through h7. So let's see what happens with d7, and then bishop takes d7, h7, and then bishop takes f5, and then you lost. White is lost, right? So this d7 is not working. So then the right move is h7, and then bishop g6, king c4, bishop takes h7, and then d7. But black also gets h2. Now d8 queen, h1 queen. Now here is another critical position. Where should white give the check? Obviously not king e8, because then white can simply defend with, black can simply defend with bishop g6, or he can even move the king to another light square. So king e8 only helps black activate his bishop to a better square. So queen e8 is not so good. Queen d5 will exchange queens, and then after the exchange of queens, black will simply put his bishop on d3 and take this pawn. So let's say you play this, then simply queen takes, and then if once your pawn is gone, it's a draw, right? So here queen d5 does not work. Queen e8 also does not work. Wait, so black cannot play king g6 because of queen h8 picking up the queen. So yeah, so queen king g6 does not work. So he may go to here, and then if you give a check here, then he'll simply do like this. Yeah, so this is also not very clear. It's most likely a draw. So here, after this position, white's move is queen d1 check. Why queen d1 check? Because we want to give a discovery and then pick up these queens and force white to go to a light square. Force black to go to a light square because he cannot go to a dark square. If he goes to a dark square, then white wins, picks up the queen. So the point of queen d1 check is to force black king to the g6 square. There is only one move that the king can make, that is the g6 square. That is the point of queen d1, forcing move. So king g6 and then queen b1. Now again, he cannot go to a dark square because if the king goes to a dark square, then we again give a discovery and pick up the queen. So from here on, the black king has only three light squares to go to. King f7, f5 is taken, or h5, back to h5. If he goes to h5, this is worse because we just take the bishop, and in the next move we'll take the queen. So this is not working. So the only move black king has is f7. So now remember, we previously told that this is the square where we want to exchange the queen, right? So without, now we give a check here and force a queen trade, and then white is completely winning. So here, let's go back to the starting position. So here, up to this part is easy. Yeah, now comes the critical point where your check should be at the right square. You should not just give a random check. You should give this check with the motive of giving a discovery and picking up the queen and force the king to go to the g6 square. That is the point of giving this check. When in this type of positions, we give a check because we can give a check, or most people will give a check because that is the only thing that they comes to their mind. Some people will also play like this. Okay, so don't give random checks. Think about it. Why are you giving that check and what are you trying to accomplish? So here, by this check, you are forcing this king to the g6 square, because if he goes to a dark square, he loses the queen. So here begins a forcing variation where the king must go to g6. There is no other square left. And then you give queen b1 check and again force the king to go to b7. h5 is even worse. He loses the bishop and then the queen. So f7, and then you do a queen trade on the b7 square, which is now a completely winning position for white. So so when you get this type of positions, think about the deflection was the easy part. You cannot deflect via d7 because then the bishop comes here. So the deflection is easier. And then this is the critical position where you should give the check. Queen d1, king g6, and then queen b1, king f7, and queen b7. Thanks.